Welcome back to the Wednesday Project. I'm Christina, and I want to start today with something that might feel small, but I don't think it is. Have you ever been in the middle of something? A conversation, a commitment, a season, and notice something in you just go quiet? Not dramatic, not a breakdown, just a kind of stillness that showed up before you had words for it. Maybe you pushed through. Maybe you told yourself it was just fear or laziness or a lack of faith. Maybe you didn't even notice it fully until later when you looked back and thought, something in me knew. That quiet, that subtle internal shift is what we're sitting with today. Because I think a lot of us have been taught to override that signal before we ever learn to listen to it. We've been taught that faithfulness means forward, that trust means through, that the body's hesitation is an obstacle to belief, not a participation in it. And today, I want to gently, carefully push back on that. Not because limits are always wisdom, but because sometimes, more often than we've been told, they are. There's a moment in 1 Kings chapter 19 that I think doesn't get enough attention. Elijah has just come off one of the most dramatic moments in all of Scripture. He called down fire from heaven. He stood alone against hundreds of false prophets. He watched God show up in a way that was undeniable. And then, almost immediately after, he ran. Not toward something, away. He went into the wilderness, sat down under a broom tree, and said, "It is enough. I have had enough, Lord. Take my life." Now, if you had been his spiritual director at the moment, what would you have said? Maybe, "Where is your faith?" Maybe, "Look what God just did." Or maybe, "You need to get back out there." But that's not what God said. God didn't correct him. God didn't rebuke him. God didn't remind him of the victory he'd just witnessed. God sent an angel who touched him and said, "Get up and eat. The journey is too much for you." The journey is too much for you. Not push through. Not trust harder. But you need food. You need rest. Your body has reached its limit, and that limit is real. God met the body first, before the theology, before the calling, before the next assignment. The body's enough was honored before Elijah even understood what was happening to him. And I think that matters more than we realize, because so many of us are sitting under our own broom tree right now, not in failure, not in faithlessness, but in a moment where something in us has quietly said, "This is enough for now." And we haven't known whether to trust it. What happened to Elijah wasn't weakness. It was his body doing exactly what bodies do when they've carried too much for too long. Something in him registered the weight before his mind had caught up, before he could theologize it, before he could pray his way through it, before he could decide whether it was faith or fear. His body knew first. And I want to stay here for a moment because I think this is where a lot of us get stuck. We feel something shift inside us, a tightening, a flatness, a kind of quiet that descends before we've made any conscious decision. And our first instinct is to interrogate it. Is this God? Is this me? Is this fear? Am I being faithful? Or am I just avoiding something hard? And those aren't bad questions. But sometimes we ask them before we've done something simpler, before we've just noticed. Here's something I want you to hold. Not a clinical concept, but as a truth about how you were made. Your body registers experience before your conscious mind does. That's not a flaw in the design. That is the design. The tightening in your chest, the sudden flatness, the moment something in you goes quiet, that's not your body working against you. That's information. It's arriving in the only language your body knows how to speak. And God, as we just saw with Elijah, doesn't ask you to silence that language in order to hear him. He meets you in it. He sends the angel to the place where your body has already landed, not to the place you think you should be. So before we talk about discernment, before we talk about wisdom versus avoidance, I want to ask you something quieter. What has your body been saying that you haven't let yourself fully hear yet? You don't have to answer that out loud, but let it sit. So, let's talk about the question that I know is sitting right underneath all of this. Because I've heard it from clients. I've heard it from friends. I've asked it myself. How do I know if I'm being wise or if I'm just scared? How do I know if stepping back is discernment or avoidance dressed up in spiritual language? And I want to honor that question because it's an honest one. Avoidance is real. Fear is real. And sometimes we do use, I need to honor my limits, as a way of not doing the hard thing in front of us. So I'm not going to tell you that every no is holy, but I'm going to tell you that avoidance and discernment feel different in the body, and you can learn to tell them apart. Avoidance is usually loud on the inside, even when it's quiet on the outside. It has an urgency to it, a pressure, and I need to get away from this right now. It often comes with a kind of mental noise, rehearsing, justifying, building a case for why leaving is reasonable. Because avoidance needs to convince you. Discernment doesn't. Discernment tends to feel quieter, slower, sometimes even reluctant. It doesn't rush you away from something. It settles. Even when the answer is hard. Even when stepping back costs something. There's a groundedness to it that avoidance doesn't carry. Discernment often arrives without fanfare. Not get out now, but not this, not yet, not like this. And here's the part that I think is most important for people of faith. Discernment keeps you in relationship. It doesn't sever. It doesn't flee. It doesn't require you to stop caring about the thing you're stepping back from. It just says, I can't do this from here. I need to find a different footing. Avoidance wants out. Discernment wants truth. And sometimes, this is the part we don't talk about enough, sometimes you won't know which one it is in the moment. Sometimes you step back and you're not sure. And that's okay. Because here's what I want you to hold. Honoring your limits is not a departure from faith. It may be one of the most honest acts of trust you can offer. Because trust doesn't mean convincing yourself you have more capacity than you do. Trust means staying honest with God, with yourself, about what is actually true right now. Elijah didn't perform his way back to health. He received what was offered. He rested. He ate. He got up when he was ready. And God worked with that. God didn't need Elijah to override his body to stay in relationship with him. And he doesn't need that from you either. I want to slow down here for just a moment because I think what we've been talking about today deserves more than a summary. It deserves a little space. If you've spent years overriding yourself and calling it faithfulness, if you've treated every internal no as something to push past rather than something to listen to, then what we've talked about today might feel a little disorienting. Not wrong, just new. And that's okay. You don't have to resolve it today. You don't have to go back through your history and reclassify every decision you've ever made. You don't have to know right now whether what you're feeling is discernment or avoidance. You just have to be willing to start listening with a little less suspicion than you did before. That's enough. That's actually a lot. Because the goal today wasn't to give you a new set of rules for how to manage your body. The goal was something quieter. To offer you the possibility that your body has been participating in your faith all along. That the quiet, the tightening, the not yet, none of that was working against God. It was part of how He made you. And it's worth paying attention to. So, as you head back into your week, into the commitments, the relationships, the places where you're asked to show up and keep going, I want to leave you with this. You are not failing God when you pause. You are not losing ground when you step back. You are not less faithful because something in you has gone quiet and asked for rest. Elijah sat under a broom tree and said, "It is enough." And God said, "Yes, I know. Let me take care of you here." That's available to you too. Not someday, not once you push through whatever it is that's in front of you right now, but here, in this, in the not yet, and the I need a moment, and the quiet that descends before you have words for it. So this week, be someone who notices. Be someone who listens before she decides. Be someone who trusts that God is present in the pause just as much as in the pressing forward. You don't have to earn your way back to yourself. You're already there. Until next Wednesday, may you rest without guilt, listen without shame, and trust that the God who met Elijah under a broom tree already knows exactly where you are.